All right, welcome to another edition of Soto Desperado Plays Ark Survival Ascended. Over here, I bred the Carnos. I got a few more noob Carnos here. So just to show you, I have them just like I used to have the Rexes. The males right here in the middle. Here's an oviraptor, and he'll pick up eggs as they drop. There's another oviraptor downstairs that doesn't have any Carnos yet. I may have to elevate it about a level to get this to work, but I should be able to do it. And yeah, there we go. So there we are. We're breeding some of these guys, some newbies, and hopefully we'll get. So far, I just got I got a weight mutation on the Carnos, which doesn't do me any good. You know, if I get health, I'll probably do health, and if I get, the other stuff, attack, I'll do attack. But health and attack are the only two I really need. I don't need anything else. But I'll save those in cryo. Okay. Speaking of cryo, do I have any more? Get some more cryos. So anyway, there's an interview I found online on the website one of the websites one of the YouTube channels that I'm subscribed to, and it's essentially about invisible people. That's what it's called. And I don't like homelessness. I think being homeless myself many times in my lifetime. I really fucking hate it. But at the same time, homelessness is, you could see it as nothing more than another hard lesson. Another hard lesson that, most people don't want to learn. They just don't want to learn. So, okay, almost done with that. That one's halfway. I put this one late. Let's see. Get some meat. So they're going over why there's homelessness, why there's people out there that can't afford to live, can't afford to work, what happened to all the government housing, basically the major corporations that have lobbies and things like that. You'll as you listen to the interview, I listened to the first part of it. As you listen, you'll see that he breaks down all the contributing factors to homelessness and why we're in the state that we are in. And that's where I left off. But it's interesting. I just put these over here. Did a lot of work today. Wasn't really up for anything, but I did it anyway, and that's a good thing. When you don't feel like doing it, that's when you should try to do it. Whatever it is you don't want to do, that's when you should go out and do it. Now, this is a long interview. It's like 40 minutes, 45 minutes or so. So just be aware of that. I try to put a little food on there just in case. It's almost done. I'm going to go get the interview started. Once again, this channel, Invisible People, has 1.15 million subscribers. 8 hours ago they put this up. Today is 10/12/2024, and homelessness truth bombs, 41 years of it only getting worse. All right. This gentleman's been homeless that long.
Housing's important. We need to subsidize home ownership where the mortgage companies and the real estate industry and the banks make bang. But housing isn't essential for poor people. So one is economic stimulus, the other is charity, and you have to be worthy of it and get on the waiting list, and we'll call you in 7 years. The federal government has demolished and gotten rid of or sold off 487,000 units of the housing that was created for the poorest people. If you want to talk about the recipe for homelessness in America, that pretty much is it in a nutshell. And we are going to fight like hell against this out of sight, out of mind approach to addressing homelessness. We're human beings. We're not the homeless. We're not the disabled. We're not the immigrant. We're not the day laborer. We're not the trans person. We're human beings entitled to dignity and respect. This isn't a homeless movement. Homelessness is a manifestation of a society lacking in justice.
First time I met Paul was in Washington, D.C., and we were at a meeting, and there were politicians, and Paul stood up, and he just was brutally honest, letting out F-bombs, and that's what Paul's known for. I consider Paul one of the most knowledgeable advocates on homelessness. This is an informative podcast you're going to want to download and share with everybody.
Hey, bro.
Hey. You're one of my favorite people because you're so knowledgeable about homelessness and advocacy and how we all got here. In fact, the last interview, we based it on 40 years of homelessness.
Right. 41 years now. It's been about a year. This is the first issue, not housing, not human right to housing or health care or residential treatment or living wage. None of those issues made it to the Supreme Court. Sweeps made it to the Supreme Court.
Ticketing homeless people for a blanket.
And also it's an exclusion law. If I can't sit, if I can't stand still, if I can't lay down, if I can't protect myself from the elements, if I can't have any belongings in your community, you're excluding me from being in the community. And exclusion laws were found to be cruel and unusual punishment in 1912. By the 1930s, they had said no more excluding people based on race or based on status. Whether it's disability, whether it's race, sundown towns with, hey, Jap, don't let the sun set on you here. This is a white man's town, talking about Roseville, California. That's what this is. And we have never yet addressed the issue of time, place, and manner restrictions that local government purview because of health and safety enforcement powers are used to remove people from communities and have been historically. And most of these laws, or the early laws, were created in the ugly laws, which were very directly, if you're diseased, maimed, mutilated so as to be deemed unsightly, it's illegal for you to be in public space.
There was ugly laws?
Yeah, from the 1860s to 1976.
Man, because I would get ticketed for that.
Well, and no, you wouldn't. You're a white boy, and neither would I.
Good point.
The original laws were returning property to slave owners, not criminalizing and excluding the presence of human beings, but returning property. Yeah. And when you look at business improvement districts today, and when you look at how these laws are being enforced today, now we're trying to protect public property and the rights of property owners, whether it be public, because the city deems itself the owner and the state deems itself the owner of these properties, or private, that everything in our governance is geared to ensuring those people are happy. Not the community is welcome and present and living where they choose to live, but that the property rights of the homeowners or the business owners or the business improvement districts or the local governments are sacrosanct to what is important. What is the role of law in governing in our community? And to some of us, it's like, hey, dude, we're human beings. We're not the homeless. We're not the disabled. We're not the immigrant. We're not the day laborer. We're not the trans person. We're human beings. And we're entitled to dignity and respect. And when we get dignity and respect, we give dignity and respect. And so we have to build this movement from that context. This isn't a homeless movement. Homelessness is a manifestation of a society lacking in justice. It's not a situation into and of itself.
Right.
And if we don't move our organizing and our research and all the data stuff they got at this conference, what is this data for? It's because HUD wants you to do HMIS forms in order to get money from HUD. To know my mother's maiden name? The hell you need to know that for? So it's like we need to do our own research. We need to create our own artwork. We need to do our own messaging. We need to have parties, not just demos. Do street theater. Use art. Right. Be creative.
Music.
Like, make it an event.
Right.
Not just some boring-ass thing with this old white guy like me sitting up there giving a goddamn speech about why you should be at this demo. You're already at the demo. So make it a fucking event. And make it real. And make it live. And give it some passion. How freaking boring when you go to these city council hearings and okay, Your Honor, thank you so much. Dude, you work for me. You're a politician and I'm the public. I ain't thanking you to listen to what I got to say or this lived experience crap that we're seeing all the time now. That's because foundations are funding lived experience. It's like we've been living this experience for over 40 years. You're just now starting to listen to us because some foundation's going to give, or HUD is funding lived experience programs? I'm sorry, man. Too late. Shut up.
There's there's so many points I want to interject here.
Yeah,
don't never apologize. Be yourself. You're going to be yourself anyway. I got to stop at the lived experience thing because
I had a feeling you might.
There's nothing that a homeless person, everything has been said, right? Shelters suck. We need housing. Stop harassing us. Treat us with dignity. Over and over and over. So they're now creating these committees. Lived experience is sexy. You got webinars. You got conference sessions about lived experience. And they're even calling it lived expertise. Well, if I'm an expert, you're paying these consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, if this is a lived expert, pay them, right? You're not empowering them. It's mostly tokenism. And there's nothing that a person with lived experience can say that hasn't already been said a gazillion times. They're not listening. They're not affecting change.
They're not finding the common threads in what people are saying. They're too busy trying to find out if we're left-handed, right-handed, blue-eyed, green-eyed, disabled. You know, like the first thing you always get, and this is from being a service provider, being ass out, you know, and doing this for a while, is what's your name, what's your social security number, and what's wrong with you? Huh? What's wrong with me? Well, I live in a society that's lacking in justice. That's what's wrong with me. I think if we spent more time, and that's why we did Without Housing and some of the other stuff that we've done, is what happened right before 1983 when we started opening shelters again. When FEMA started funding emergency shelters. Because we sure as hell had racism before 1983. We had disability issues. We had poverty. We had classes. Like, all of these other structural injustices, all of these other issues already existed. We didn't have general public, family, youth, emergency shelter systems. We didn't. And something happened. And that's where Without Housing, you see this massive demolishing of federal funding. And since 94, we've demolished 487,000 units of public housing, which was created for the poorest of the poor. So even during the housing first, let's address homelessness, The federal government has demolished and gotten rid of or sold off 487,000 units of the housing that was created for the poorest people. So we're seeing all of this data. We're seeing homeless management information systems. We're seeing tokenizing a couple of homeless people and putting them on a goddamn panel that no one's going to listen to what they got to say anyway. And several homeless people have said at this conference, and this is not unique to this conference.
Right.
But aside from telling my story, what do they want me to do? What's my role? Like, is that all I'm good for? Is tell us your story and shut the fuck up?
Right.
That's not empowerment.
Right.
That is tokenizing.
Totally.
And so I think we have to get real about, are the institutions that are claiming to address homelessness trying to work themselves out of a job? Period. Because if the end goal isn't, okay, now I guess I got to go to McDonald's and get a real job, then you need to shut the fuck up. Honestly, like, after all these years, we have more and more institutions. We have more and more studies. We have more and more panels and conferences and
consultants.
Consultants.
I call it consultant heaven. They all go to consultant heaven.
HMIS was a consultant's wet dream. It was. And it was 3 sentences in a McKinney reauthorization bill. And those 3 sentences were put in by a couple of the national groups at the behest of the companies that are now doing the consultant to do HMIS. And it's become a multi-million-dollar boondoggle.
For people that don't know, that are listening, HMIS is Homeless Management Information Systems. And unlike the healthcare, like we were talking about this earlier, I went to the emergency room here in San Francisco. I'm okay, but I walked in and it's about money, got to get paid, insurance, but they helped me. I saw a doctor relatively quick who helped my issue, right? It's still about money, still about data, but also there's care in there, right? Providing value and support and healthcare to that person. Where an outreach worker, you're a homeless person, and an outreach worker comes up and says, you got AIDS? You Hispanic? You a veteran? And then they check down the box, and it's sorry you don't qualify and walk away. Or if you're lucky, you get on a housing list or a shelter list, and you still are sitting in your tent.
Well, and that's the thing. What if you went to the doctor, or you finally got to see the doctor, and you had whatever was going on with your heart, you said?
Yeah, it's shoulder issue.
Shoulder? And they gave you a foot splint. That's emergency shelter. That's motivational case management. That's coordinated intakes. What is your problem? I got nowhere to freaking live. I don't have a home. Oh, well, here's a shelter bed. Or here's a mat on the floor. Or here's an intake for, motivational whatever. Here's life skills training. My God, people, give me a freaking break. You think poor people don't understand life skills? Go live in the freaking projects for a couple of years, and you'll know life skills. Like, you don't need to fucking teach me that. The issue really has come down to, and especially after COVID, it's like they did shelter in place, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, what are all these people doing out in the streets? Dude, we've been there the whole time. We just were scattered because the cops kept fucking with us, or the Urban Alchemy staff or the BID staff kept messing with us. So, like, it really told you the definition of stupidity. You keep doing the same thing, and we're still went right back to coordinated intakes and chronic homeless priorities and stuff. So families are still poorly housed when they're doubled up, tripled up, or living in a single-room occupancy hotel. God forbid you're on the waiting list in San Francisco for a shelter bed, an emergency shelter bed.
Do they
has
still have
waiting
the lottery
list.
Here?
But look, if you're then go to San Mateo to stay at a cousin's house and they find out, like, you're stupid enough to tell them the truth, and you call and say, I'm in San Mateo at my cousin's house, you're off the list.
Right.
Because you left town.
Right.
And it's like, that is all about screening out people's eligibility to receive services. But then you look at the homeowner mortgage interest deduction program in the IRS, everybody that qualifies gets it right away every year. But you look at the housing programs and the other programs for poor people, and it's all about screening out eligibility. After Hope 6, all of these rule changes came into effect. Hope 6 was destroying the public housing because we said it was unlivable, and then replacing it with mixed income housing, nicer units, but targeting a different population of wealth of the people. Because Clinton said, well, it's good for poor people to live next door to working people because it gives them somebody to look up to. They didn't make the whole community mixed income. They made the area where the poor people were living in public housing mixed income because it gave the poor people somebody to look up to. It was just a matter of not wanting to subsidize housing for poor people. The feds had been pulling out of that business for a while. And the scary part is the states and local governments aren't going to be able to replace it. Right now, we're running at about $56 billion a year less that the federal government spends between the USDA, or U.S. Department of Agriculture, on rural housing programs and HUD. You're looking at roughly $56 billion a year less that they spend on those programs. And you're looking at $125 billion a year that we subsidize home ownership with. So it's just this really obvious class differential. Well, housing's important. We need to subsidize home ownership where the mortgage companies and the real estate industry and the banks make bang. But housing isn't essential for poor people. So one is economic stimulus, the other is charity, and you have to be worthy of it and get on the waiting list, and we'll call you in 7 years. And it's all based on your income status.
Right.
Which then also translates to the color of your skin and your education level and all the other things that go into living in a capitalist system. But it's all like housing, money not collected. You owe me $50, I tell you to keep it. I just gave you $50. So money not collected through the IRS as a housing subsidy is money spent. Money spent, you asked me for $50, I give you a $50 bill, is money spent. So we don't look at how it's the same thing from an economic standpoint. But the worthiness of who can access it, they never ask homeowners, well, how many toothbrushes are in your bathroom? Who's sleeping on your couch? Who's coming over your house? Do you have a criminal record? They just look for, are you paying interest on your mortgage? Okay, you qualify, you get it. It's not a line item in the budget. Everybody that qualifies gets it, so they don't cap how much goes to that program like they do for poor people. And to me, that's just that's neoliberal economic policy. And you want to talk about the solution to homelessness? How about we treat everybody like they're a human being? And if we say housing is important for people, okay, that should be all people.
Right.
Not housing is important for certain people, but a charity endeavor for everyone else.
The chosen few. Does San Francisco still have a lottery system for shelter?
Yes. Well, they have a waiting list.
Right. But it used to be a lottery, right?
No, it's a waiting list, though, now. They have a waiting list.
You had to call every day or something to see if you could get into the shelter?
Or check in at one of the consolidated intake sites.
And you got to walk around the city and all kinds of crazy... I remember Jennifer stood up in a city council meeting with a map where, showing how far people had to walk. That's my memory of it.
And then they say, well, they're service resistant.
Right.
But every bed's full to the point that there's a waiting list. So when they talk about when they were doing sweeps yesterday, and they're sweeping vehicle dwellers up on Bernal Hill right now as we speak, and they talk about how, well, we gave them a referral to the shelter. It's like, well, who did you kick out? Because the shelters have a waiting list to access the shit.
Right.
So you didn't open a new shelter.
Right.
Like, who did you kick out to bump the list?
And you're aware, of course, of 4118 and how they suppressed the report and what's happening in LA. And, a lot of people are saying, well, it's a failure. No, it was designed for political purposes to remove homeless people visibly. That's what it was about. It was never meant 4118 to help homeless people.
You heading back to L.A. when you leave here?
Yeah.
You should check out the L.A. Ken report. They were putting pressure on the city council to release the report, and they put out their report a couple of days before the city council report or the LAHSA report was leaked. But my point is, everybody's saying, oh, it's a failure because homeless people didn't get help. Well, it was never meant for homeless people to get help. No.
It was meant as a political ploy. It was meant for optics to, we're going to sweep these homeless people out of sight. We're going to remove them from schools. And for that, it worked.
And that's what I mean about the causal aspects of this. We spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy, and spread a lot of hate dealing with the fact that homelessness exists. So therefore, if we can make homeless people disappear, we don't see it. If there's no black people in my town, I don't have a race problem.
Oh.
You know what I mean? If there's no homeless people in my town, I don't have a homeless problem. And people have been saying today when I came here to meet with you, like, oh, you see a lot of homeless people here. And I said, yeah, and we fight our asses off to make goddamn sure you do. Because we will not disappear. We will not cease to exist because you don't want to see the fact that we do exist. We are going to fight like hell to stay visible. And we are going to fight like hell against this out of sight, out of mind approach to addressing homelessness. Well, I go to this town and I don't see any homeless people. It's like, yeah, maybe you don't. One, catchment zones have been around forever.
Yeah.
So get on your side of the tracks. And our attitude is this whole freaking town is our side of the tracks, and we're going to be right where the fuck we are. And we're going to keep fighting with you in order to stay here because we're not lemmings. We're not jumping off the cliff into the ocean because you don't want to see our ass. Yeah. We're going to fight this shit until we address what created the shit. And what created the shit across the country was massive cuts under the Reagan Revolution to the funding and the management of affordable housing for poor people, for all people. And 98, they changed it to say the federal, part of welfare reform, the federal government cannot be held accountable to ensure that there's housing for even a majority of its citizens. Whereas in 1937, when they created what's now called HUD, it said the responsibility of the federal government is to ensure that all citizens have a safe, clean, decent place to live. I might object to the citizen aspect of it, but I don't, that's semantics for right now. What is important right now is the role of the federal government was transferred from ensuring that people have access to affordable, safe, decent housing to declaring that they cannot be held accountable that even a majority of people do. If you want to talk about the Julia Child recipe for homelessness in America, that pretty much is it in a nutshell. You wipe out opportunities for people to, and then they did a $3 million 4-year study and found that families that got a place to live stayed there. It's like, my God, are you that fucking stupid? You could, of course they stayed there. Have you ever been ass out with your kids? You get a place to live, you're gonna stay there.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ.
And I can't believe I haven't asked you this. How do you keep up on all this stuff? Like, you must,
I make it up.
The world according to Paul.
Hey,
Yeah. Well, I know you don't make
I'm an expert. I'm a white man. I just make the shit up. And people say, wow, he must know what he's talking about.
But I mean, it's like your normal American's probably watching Netflix, and you must be reading Wikipedia and encyclopedias, and then you remember all this stuff.
I was there in the very beginning of the homeless shit.
Yeah.
You know? And so I've seen this system be created. It's not as overwhelming. All these different layers of asininity. That's a cool word. I just made that up.
Yeah, that's good.
But all these different layers, I saw them getting piled one on top of the other. Because every time they talked about a new program, they didn't totally dismantle the old program because the money aspects of it. So they tend to put layer on top of layer on top of layer. And so it's not that overwhelming for me because I was there when the house was first being built. I wish that it was a house being built, but you know what I mean.
Right. The bureaucracy being built.
And I also, I just like have an insatiable thirst for learning one new thing every day. I just think it makes it a better day. And this is from somebody who was kicked out of 4 high schools, never went to college, all that shit. But I still feel that if you go through a whole day and you didn't learn nothing new, you pretty much wasted the fucking day. So, I'm not as, and you know, then some of these dweeby-ass reports, I'm not reading that whole goddamn thing. You know, like, I'm going to go through it and pull out the shit that I think is relevant to what I think is important, which is the shit that's going to allow us to build power to address this shit. And when I say that, I'm talking about generational. Like, I'm not, you know, when they started stacking the courts through the Heritage Foundation and shit, they weren't doing it for that campaign, for that day. They were doing it to get where they are now. And you have to build your organizing with that same generational mindset of how do we connect the education and the healthcare and the living wages and the homelessness and how do we use our skills and our art and our research to build power so that one day down the road somebody's going to be able to say, hey, shit, remember when we used to have all this shit going on? It's so cool we don't have that anymore. But I don't have I'm not at all thinking that's going to happen in my lifetime, and I don't give a shit. My job is to push the rock up the hill. You know, hopefully it keeps going.
That's a good way of thinking of, you know, pushing the rock up the hill. Grants Pass.
They're talking about diluting the incredibly meager, kind of half-assed protections that have existed under the 8th Amendment of the Constitution. And they're talking about deleting it so that local governments can exclude homeless people from local communities.
And politicians on both sides are saying we need this tool of criminalizing to protect our cities, which they could solve homelessness to protect their cities.
And sit-lie laws were created so that gay and lesbian people wouldn't be hanging out in the Castro anymore because the city had to protect itself from these people. You know, like, that's not new. Sundown towns were created to protect that community. That's where the power of the health and safety enforcement that local governments have is so easily manipulated to put out clearly racist and classist policing programs.
Yeah.
And the 8th Amendment hasn't ever actually overturned those powers. That hasn't touched those powers. They've messed with certain programs that have been implemented, sundown towns, Jim Crow, different aspects of how these powers have been abused to oppress people. But we have never at the core, and it's just like we haven't addressed homelessness by a house. Nothing ends homelessness like a home. Nothing addresses poverty and racism and classist policing programs like stopping local governments from doing that. If you're going to pass a loitering law, you better arrest every single person that's standing still in your city. You're not going to be able to do that. So you're not able to pass loitering laws. Standing still on a public sidewalk is not a criminal offense. Tell them that. Say it. That's not what this case is about. Like, somebody's going to take your wallet and you have an option. You can punch them once and then get your ass kicked, and they're still going to get your wallet, but they know that you're going to punch them once for taking your wallet. Or you can let them just have the wallet and walk away. Those are your options.
Right.
We're the kind of people that will punch you once, even if we know you're going to kick our ass. Like, it's just not going to make it easy for you to fuck me over. I'm not going to tell you that's okay. I'm not going to say, oh, well, I guess you're, It's like, no, you piss me the fuck off. You're trying to hurt me. You're trying to hurt my community.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you know that I think that shit's fucked up.
Yeah.
And that's always been my attitude. And if they're going to keep punking on us like they do,
right,
they're going to know that they were in a fight.
Yeah.
And if I win, which very rarely happens, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The issue is, are you going to get up and fight again tomorrow?
Yep.
That's all that matters.
So there's a growing push. I mean, it's a little bit covert. You might think otherwise, but for forced camps, the sanctioned camps, along with the criminalization, this all seems to be headed towards forced internment camps.
Wow. 40 years later, and this is what you fucking came up with? Holy shit.
Right.
Yeah. Sanctioned encampments and shelters are not a home. Homelessness ends with a home. Yeah.
It's hard for me morally to even comprehend that's where we're headed. But
oh no, that's where we've gone. Like, it's already started.
Yeah.
It's an industry.
Yeah.
It's an industry. And we keep creating industries around addressing poverty and oppression and the disability rights shit without addressing treatment and living wages and an income that people can sustain and live on, or housing. And that's the danger of the war on poverty and 501c3 nonprofit shit is, all right, now you're a 501c3 nonprofit, which RAP is. Now you work for us.
And you can't lobby, and you can't... we
can educate.
Yeah, for 15% of my resources I can use for lobbying, but only certain rules.
And we don't spend a lot of time on that shit. You would never see, my political campaign was funded by RAP. You ain't gonna see that, because that ain't never gonna happen.
In our last interview, what you said was, if you want to kill a revolution, fund it.
That's true. Now you're working for me. And we heard that so many times at this conference. Well, I would love to say that, but I can't. Well, actually, you can. And be free to speak truth. They
can't
shut you. They
can't shut your mouth.
It's not a violation of the rules of being a 501c3 to speak truth. It's a violation to fund and actively solicit political campaigns.
Right.
It's not against the rules to go to a city council meeting and say, hey, what you're doing is fucking wrong. Or to speak out at a community forum and say they're making us do intakes that mean we're disqualifying people that really need help.
Yeah. We're a news publisher, and I would love to grow that. Because, you have your CNN and your Fox News and everything in between, and people are not really reporting on homelessness. I mean, it's gotten better and it's gotten worse. Long story short, there's organizations that will help nonprofit news, but because we do advocacy too, they won't work with us. And I'm like, I can't say something's wrong and not try to fix it. But we are not allowed to be part of something that would significantly help us because we're doing advocacy.
I always find it amazing when the mainstream media says they don't do advocacy. That's just not true.
Explain.
When you're getting all of your information from a press release, or when you're regurgitating point-in-time numbers because HUD says this is how many homeless people there are, and you know goddamn well that's not accurate, but you don't say it because you don't want to be an opinion piece, you're full of shit. And you're regurgitating bullshit. It's propaganda. You're regurgitating Goebbels' propaganda, and you're not calling it for what it is. And so when these guys, my deadline's 4:00, Paul, that's what they told me. And it's like, it's not in quotes. You didn't say it like one time there was an article that was like, yeah, and they're putting people straight into housing. And I was like, there's a waiting list. Like, how are they jumping the waiting list? Oh, they just said they would. And I was like, it's against the federal law to use HUD money and bump the waiting list for getting into Section 8 housing. Yeah. So when they're telling you that they're getting people straight into Section 8 units, they're lying. And you're not even fact-checking it. Like, that's not
Paul, how
news.
do you feel about media?
But I just think it doesn't teach you a whole hell of a lot. And I've seen it like one time with this national group was like, oh, the navigation centers in San Francisco are doing this. And I called them up and I was like, what the fuck you talking about? Oh, well, we got it from a Chronicle article. And I was like, so that's factual? Because it was in the Chronicle? Get a life. Like, that is not facts and information. It's propaganda. And so that for them to turn around and say, oh, well, the street sheet isn't really journalism. Yeah, well, neither is your shit. So at least the street sheet can document where our information comes from, why we're putting it out there, what we think it means, and why it matters. If you don't consider that worthy news, that's on you. But don't tell me your shit is all virgin, pure shit, and our shit is less than. Because our shit's more accurate, and we can back up our information.
What do you see homelessness like in a year and 5 years? What keeps driving you? There's got to be a vision that at some point we're going to have a breakthrough. At some point we're going to influence change. I know moving the rock up the hill.
I think this is generational, and I think in 5 years we'll be doing the same thing that we're doing today.
Yeah. Well, tell us about RAP.
We're a collection of organizations, primarily, almost exclusively in the western United States. Years ago, there was a proposal to open regional offices of a national group. The national group didn't want to do it. The thing was, we were tired of looking for other organizations to carry our voice and to say the stuff that we saw in the front doorways of our offices and in the streets and doing our outreach. We were tired of saying, well, why aren't they saying that? Why aren't they saying this? And decided we were going to shut up complaining about what others were or weren't doing and start doing our own shit. And that was 19 years ago. We started on March 1st in 2005.
What tips would you give for other people trying to organize advocacy?
Don't think you're going to get freaking rich. And don't let the money dictate your priorities. If you're not, and I tell every group, and I've helped or worked with several groups, get your agenda from the goddamn streets. Be accountable in the goddamn streets. We were talking today about messaging around Grants Pass, and they were talking about our artwork, and people are always like, oh, I love it so much. But they don't, but the only people I give a shit when they look at our newsletter or our posters or our stickers is do people that are living unhoused and poor in our local communities, do they look at this and say, yep, these guys know what they're talking about. Yep, that's the shit. Hey, where do I get one? That's why we decommodified all of our stuff. You can't sell T-shirts to a homeless motherfucker that's about homelessness. Like, what the fuck? So it's like you worry about, are you accountable to the people that you're claiming to rep? And just because I've been homeless doesn't make me accountable. That's not bullshit. That's nothing, So what makes you accountable is you have a process built in that is accountability. And that you only worry. I don't care what anyone else thinks of our shit. I love that people like it. I love that people buy our T-shirts so that we can give other ones out for free. So that's cool. But I don't care. I care about, and from being somebody who was ass out looking at the TV and seeing these people talk about my life, talk about homelessness. And I'm like, who the fuck are you? Oh, there's a leader, and he's an expert. They're usually he's. And I would be like, I never heard of this motherfucker, and the shit they're saying doesn't resonate with me. I don't know where they're getting their shit from. So it was like, I don't ever want a homeless person to be sitting in a drop-in center, looking up at the TV, see us on the news, and say, what the fuck are they talking about? They may not agree with us, but they've heard it.
Right.
You know, it's like, that's the thing about finding the common thread. It may not be what you think, but, oh yeah, I've heard that shit, you know? And that, to me, is the only thing I care about in our writing and in our books and in our reports and all of that shit.
How do people find you?
Raphome.org. WRAPHOME.org.
Yeah.
We're not hiding.
Yeah.
We're there. And all the stuff on our website can be downloaded and used for free. It's all Creative Commons. Information's power. So we make goddamn sure all of it is available for free.
Anything you'd like to add?
Just, we gotta, like, all organizers are always talking about, oh, we need to stop silo-based organizing. Well, let's stop talking about that and do it. And I know I'm not pointing fingers, but it's like, we have to get serious. That we're not going to end homelessness without ending racism. We're not going to end racism without ending... Like, we have to look at these structures and talk about how do we build power so none of us is being oppressed like this. And the Eighth Amendment case is a good example of that. We weren't the first targets of these laws, and we won't be the last targets of these laws. And so understanding that there's common threads in these forms of oppression, whether you call it neoliberalism, whether you call it capitalism or whatever, these common threads unite us a lot more than divide us. And fuck if you don't like somebody's personality, you can still work with the group. You can still work on the issue. Too many organizers get hung up or these national...
You hang out with me.
Oh, I don't like that person, so I don't work with that group. We need to stop. We're not dating each other. We're working on a campaign together, and we need to get some serious shit done. And frankly, the unhoused community members, the people sitting in prison for shit for no reason, nobody should be sitting in prison. So I'm not going to say for shit they didn't do.
The one line I like...
They don't care if you and I like each other.
Right.
So fuck it. It doesn't matter. The
one line I like from the AA is principles before personalities. And Mark Horvath's version of that is, I might not go bowling with you, which I don't go bowling, but it's my way of, saying,
yeah, no, I get it.
We're not going to be buddies, but if you're helping hurting people, I'm going to support you. I might not like you. I might not go bowling with you, but if you're helping hurting people, I'll support you. And you are so spot on with that. I haven't been in a COC meeting in many, many years, but every time I'm in a COC meeting, the one thing that hits me is, and it's usually middle to upper management. So that means above. You go all the way to HUD secretary and president. And then below is frontline workers, right? So you have all these people just to make decisions on how to help one person. And the amount of money in all that, right? The amount of bureaucracy. And I would always joke, we're going to end homelessness in a meeting. We need more meetings. We need more, bureaucracy.
I would say that's been the approach to poverty. I would say that's been the approach to mental health treatment, to substance abuse treatment, to equal rights. Like, that is how you kill an issue. You don't need to build power, you just need to have a press conference. You can talk about housing first as the mandate of the federal government for local communities while destroying 487,000 units of public housing. Like, the hypocrisy that's built into managing systems as opposed to addressing the cause of why that system exists in the first place is what keeps the engine going.
If you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
3 wishes. I wish this interview was open. No.
Well, you got to get through the 3 wishes
okay,
first.
I got to do that first. I would wish that we could really switch the framing of addressing issues in our country to one of uplifting human beings. And understand that every kid deserves a quality education. Every person deserves access to health care. Like, why is education, health care, and housing commodities? Like, so if no one's making money off of it, it's not worthwhile. But an educated, healthy, well-housed community benefits everybody. Like, the whole community benefits the more people have access to those 3 things.
Dude.
It makes us all healthier, makes us all smarter, makes us all happier. So why isn't that a public interest?
So selfish.
So,
greed.
like, I
Corporate
don't
greed.
get it. Like, I don't get why everything has to be a commodity. Like, some things are just fucking cool. Libraries are cool. You know, like there's just certain things that benefit everybody. Clean air would be pretty fucking cool. Like, so they don't have to be commodities to be worthwhile. We're privatizing our public parks. Come on, guys. Like, is that what it means to have public parks, like national parks? We have to privatize it and commodify it? Well, I think there's another way to address the public interest of human beings, and I wish that we could get serious about looking at that shit. That was all 3. I said education, healthcare, housing.
Okay.
Yeah, that counts as 3.
Well, thanks for putting up with me.
I love you, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Good armor, but not really what I wanted. Okay. Hoping to find another drop. Shit. Oh fuck, did it lag? Shit, it looked like it lagged for a second there. Trying to see if there's any more drops. Ah, here's a drop. More chitin boots. Ooh, a 502 pike. That's nice. Save that for a special occasion. can only carry one artifact, otherwise I'd be doubling up every time. Come on. Don't want to get stuck somewhere. I was hoping to find another Megalania, but I haven't found one yet. Doesn't look like it came back. I thought it might, but I guess not. Oh. Well, I got a male. If I can get a female, I can get all the things I need. Yeah, last one I found was up here. It's like right up there. For some reason. Nice. Made it out with the artifact and some other things. Not getting the blueprints I want, but... Sorry guys, I'm just very happy I actually made it in and out of there without dying. You know, every time I go into a cave and I make it out, I'm happy. Anyway, I guess I'll go ahead and stop the video here and maybe I'll start another one. There is a big ward video I wanted to play. Alright, thanks for watching.